Hey, what's up guys? So I recently made the switch over from using a couple of prime lenses to mostly just zooms. And I thought it would be fun to talk about a bit of a controversial topic, that being people's preference on whether or not they use primes or zooms. For those of you who haven't heard yet, I recently created a private Facebook group for photographers to connect with each other, to get together, ask questions, and share their workflow and experiences. If that's something you might be interested in. So if you do want to stay more connected with me and my community, then be sure to join the Facebook group in the link down below. In this video, I'm going to be talking about some of the advantages and disadvantages of using primes versus zoom lenses, and I'm also going to be going over my experience coming into photography as a beginner and what that transition was like for me. I'm going to be starting off with zoom lenses, and one of the big advantages with most zoom lenses is that they have image stabilization built in now. It makes it a lot better for handheld shots with slower shutter speeds, also helps with long exposure photography. Some of the newer image stabilization systems can have you hold the camera at up to 2 seconds in low light, which is amazing because that means you don't really have to bring a tripod anymore if you want to shoot a longer exposure. In addition, I find that zooms are infinitely more versatile for video because you don't have to constantly be switching lenses to change focal length and your composition. I found primes quite restraining for videos because if you wanted to change a shot from a wide to a tight, then you would have to actually switch lenses. And I think in video, it's so important to take a variety of shots. And this means that you'd be getting establishing shots, you'd be getting detail shots, capturing different elements within your setting. And overall, I found that I didn't really use such a fast aperture of, say, f1.2 or 1.4 while I'm shooting video, just because the depth of field is so razor thin that if this isn't a tripod shot and I'm moving the camera around, then it makes it incredibly difficult to get what I want in focus. With zoom lenses in both photography and videography, you have a greater flexibility to capture more candid moments. Some photographers think that it's really just lazy to zoom and you can just zoom with your feet, but really you have to understand that there is a difference in compression when you're at a different distance from your subject, and that also affects your depth of field. And when you talk about that change of depth of field or compression in your photo, then it really makes a difference on how you compose your image. I would argue that it's not necessarily worse or better to use one lens over another. Rather, it's just a different way of composing. I think that in general, it's important for a photographer to practice how to use both a zoom lens and a prime lens, just because it trains different parts of how you perceive your composition and your setting. Common myth with zoom lenses is that primes tend to be sharper than the zoom lens counterparts at the same focal length. And this was in part true back in the older film days when lens designs were not as advanced as they are today. Because zoom lenses had more optics in the lens that moved, it made it difficult to optimize the bending of your light rays into your camera at every focal length. While this might have been true for earlier film cameras, a lot of the modern lenses that are coming out today and the optical lens designs have been much improved in modern interchangeable lens camera systems. Nowadays, if there is a difference, it's mostly negligible based on the, level of lens that you buy. If you're getting a mid to high tier lens, then you should be pretty good. Even some of the kit lenses have improved quite drastically in terms of the results you can get with them. So why or why not should you use a prime lens? As a photographer, using a prime lens helps you get more intimate with a specific focal length. And this means that you understand different aspects about that focal length where you might not think about as much if you're using a zoom lens. You can be more aware of your depth of field based on the subject distance. You also have a better understanding of the compression that focal length has. And I found that when using a prime lens over a zoom lens, you actually just had one less thing to worry about in terms of zooming in to a specific focal length. But instead, it forced me to use my feet to move around the environment to see where I could get a better angle. And in doing this, this had me interact and engage more with my environment, which is a very different way of shooting than if I were to just zoom in with my lens. This helped me think of getting into more unique compositions. And when I moved back to zoom lenses, I also brought that train of thought with me. Primes tend to have a wider aperture than most zoom lenses, normally ranging between f1.2 to f1.8. Primes are generally more light than their zoom counterparts, which allows you to have a shallower depth of field improving the lens performance in low light because of the amount of light that is being let into the camera. And these two features are absolutely crucial if you are going to be shooting in a low light situation where you can't be shooting with an external flash, such as events or weddings. Depending on which prime you use, I say depending because some primes are massive, but you can have a lot of weight saving benefits if you're using smaller primes of f1.4 and 1.8 are a lot more easy to bring around than any zoom lens. Of course, the trade-off would be not being able to zoom. However, it's super convenient if you just want to take your camera out for like a day excursion to go have some fun, but you don't want to bring a chunky lens. So which one's right for you? I'm just going to be talking a little bit about what my experience was like as a beginner photographer and looking at different lenses and trying them out. If you're watching this video, you probably haven't had a lot of chance to play around with different zoom and prime lenses. And when I was first getting into photography, the first lens that I used that was apart from my kit lens was of course the Nifty 50 or the Fantastic Plastic, the Canon 50mm 1.8, which is a prime lens. And I was using this on my crop sensor body. Being a 50mm lens on that crop sensor body, my effective focal range was about equivalent to an 85mm on full frame, which I learned works in certain situations for shooting specific subjects, and it was really good for portraiture. But for a lot of other general use, the 85mm focal length wasn't ideal for it. I still really liked having the convenience of a zoom lens and being able to change your focal length by zooming in and out. So I also picked up the Canon 17-55 2.8 lens. That was a constant aperture 2.8 standard zoom lens, which was really convenient, a lot bigger than what I was used to at the time from the kit lens and the Nifty 50. And when I transitioned towards full frame, I actually could bring that 50mm over to my full frame body, which would no longer be cropped. So that 50mm focal length was a true 50mm on a full frame body. And being a cropped in focal length on a crop sensor body, 50mm was a completely different focal length for me. And that helped me become more intimate with use cases for the 50mm focal length. From there on, I just continued to play around with other lenses. It really does help if you have other photographer friends to exchange lenses and try out different ones. And just using different lenses, I think, will help you get a better understanding of properties of each lens and the use cases of the focal length, minimum focusing distance, and other aspects about the lens. And what I'm really trying to say is if you're starting out, a 50mm would be a great choice or a great first lens for you to get started in the world of photography because one, it's cheap, and two, it opens up your world of photography to be able to shoot low light situations as well as shooting with a shallow depth of field. And in order to become familiar with each focal length, I would highly recommend to try out as many lenses as you can. All of my lenses I actually purchased secondhand off of a classifieds app. In Canada they call it Kijiji, and I found that a good way to try a lens for a short amount of time is to just purchase it secondhand. And most lenses that are much sought after tend to hold onto the value quite well, and just sell it back after you're done playing with it. I know a lot of you might be skeptical about buying a secondhand lens, but really just be sure to check the condition of the lens and try it out before you buy it. If you're looking for more tips to what to look for in getting a secondhand camera or lens, I also made a video about that over here. That's all there is for this week. If you guys like this video, feel free to leave a thumbs up down below. If you guys are interested in more content like this, be sure to subscribe so you don't miss a video. I'll see you guys next Sunday. Bye.